Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm laughing because I have this pang of guilt at using this picture. I shouldn't have used that picture, that was wrong. Nevertheless, fuck it, we're in it. So smug joke man and comedian Bill Maher on Real Time, his little engine that could, Real Time with Bill Maher, had on Jordan Peterson. They were in their typical Democratic thing of bashing Donald Trump. And I say a Democratic thing because Bill Maher is essentially a Democratic hack at this point. And Jordan Peterson was on the show. Now, I don't know who Jordan Peterson is per se. I'm not a fan, or anything else. I'm nothing him because I don't know who he is. But he asked Bill Maher a straightforward, amazing question that Bill Maher completely gets wrong. Completely wrong. Unequivocally wrong. Bill Maher, I don't know if it's because he's drunk the Kool-Aid of propaganda that the Democratic Party's put out. I don't know if it's just because he's terrified of Donald Trump. And again, at some degree because of the propaganda he's swallowed in. I don't know. It seems that he's terrified. And that terror seems to be informing his opinion, which means his opinion is not informed at all. Let's take a look at what Jordan Peterson asked him. And let's take a look at his answer. And let's explain why that answer is dramatically wrong. And not just dramatically wrong. It's somewhat wrong in a way that's somewhat of a problem in American politics. Let's take a look.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yes,
I mean,
please.
I've been listening to all of this about Trump and watching how this conversations go in the U.S. And I have one question about it. I mean, there's all these people in the U.S. who are on the conservative side who are aligned with Trump for all sorts of reasons. And there's all this tension around his presidency and attempts to pull him out of his office for various reasons. And like, what do you think will happen if that comes to pass? What do you think will happen to these people that have identified with Trump? And like, how is it that Democratic types, for example, are holding out their hand to say to these conservative types, sort of like, welcome back into the fold? Because it looks to me, from an outsider's perspective, that your country is polarizing in a way that's not good, and that, you know, people are going after Trump. And I understand that. It's not like I don't understand that. But there's all these people that elected him and that are identified with him, and they're not taking this well, you know. And so, well, they're not. They're not. It's not. And you know, you might not think they're very bright and all of that, and you know, they're backwards and all of those things. But.
By the way, he's getting at the heart of something that is fucking profound, and it's, I have to be honest, it's something that I didn't see before I started my show. Like, it's something I started to see after doing my show. I thought that there was a gap or divide that couldn't necessarily be mended, and I realized that's not really true at all. The problem here is the politics have gotten so divisive that it's difficult to mend that gap because there's so much trust that's been lost in the political calculus. You have a Democrat who's for the most part a hack and his values purely revolve around the parties. And you have the Republican who is also a hack whose values, again, revolve around the parties. It's become this game of scorched earth where you fight for the lesser evil, not necessarily trying to actually do anything positive or anything even good. It's the lesser evil. He's getting this point saying, and mind you, he's insulting Bill Maher here. Bill Maher doesn't understand it. They're laughing about it, but he's being insulted. I understand that you think they're stupid and backwards. He's making that's not on them, dude. He's talking about you. He's saying that at the end of the day, what you think tells about you, not necessarily them. That you sitting in your smug little spot and all of you people in your smug little audience in this air of this rarefied air, all of you extraordinarily well paid and not necessarily in touch what it means to be an American at all, meaning the overwhelming majority of Americans. Sit there in your smug little space with all of your needs met, pontificating about how these other people are stupid and everything else. You don't know what their case is. You have no idea what drove those people to vote for Trump. Zero idea. He's making the point that you're smug assholes. Fact is, you don't care why those people voted for Trump. It was less relevant to you. You were just terrified. He's getting at something profound here. Let's take a listen at what he's getting at, and let's hear Bill Maher's response.
You know, you need to have respect for the rest of your citizens, and if your country isn't going to pull itself apart. And I really see this happening from an outsider's perspective when I come down here. And I lived in the States for a while, and it wasn't like this before.
If he
Now, just so we can understand what he asked. How on earth do you believe, from a societal standpoint, not from your individual politics standpoint, not from the little window that you as Bill Maher focus from the standpoint of whatever the Democratic Party talks about? No, from a country standpoint, looking at each and every one of your citizens as one of us. One, America, all one thing. Looking at the world and looking at the country from that very specific perspective. How on earth do you really get anything done? How on earth do you mend the gap with this kind of scorched earth approach in the way that you're talking about Donald Trump? And he's making a point. What do those people who identify with Donald Trump think when you say you want to take him out that office, when you want to make up all this shit in order to get him out the office? You haven't proved squat. They don't take your case as being legitimate. What do you think those people would think? What do you think those people would do if you try to impeach Donald Trump on some ridiculousness, which is essentially what you guys are trying to do? That gets to the core of the issue. I mean, it really does. The question is somewhat simplistic, but the question is somewhat also profound. How do your country mend? How do you ever really get anything substantial accomplished when you guys are pulling at each other in this way and you're willing to do whatever it takes to win, even if it means not getting anything done or breaking the political apparatus itself in order to win? In which case, is that even a win? What have you gotten accomplished? What big have you gotten accomplished? And I say this from the standpoint of a lefty. I'm making the point that you've gotten really nothing big accomplished. Obamacare was the biggest thing that you got accomplished. And at the end of the day, you still had rates going through the roof after it passed. You passed a right-wing healthcare plan as your big accomplishment. I'm saying you need a retooling and you need to change. And the only way you're going to get those things done is by getting those people who you've decried and called stupid and ignorant and everything else. His question is getting at the heart of the political matter. If you really want to get something accomplished, you can't do it alone. And you can't do it with a country broken in two halves in this way. You need to pull those people to your side. And fact is, there's nothing in your toolbox as Bill Maher to do that. That's what he's getting at. Let's keep going. Let's listen to Bill Maher's answer.
If it was just a regular Republican president with Republican policies, I would say you'd have a point.
Donald Trump is a regular Republican president with regular Republican policies. I would defy you to find an inch of daylight between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump. I would defy you to find an inch of daylight. The only difference, the only distinction that they're making is this kind of what they consider to be overt racism. That's it. His tone is different, but the way he governs is just the Republican policies. Would a Republican be hawkish towards Iran? Yes. Would a Republican may have tried to take away that deal? Yes. Would a Republican still be in Syria? Yes. Would a Republican increase the drone strikes? Yes. Would a Republican have passed the tax bill? Yes. I'm trying to understand what you believe a Republican would not have done. Would Mitt Romney have probably gone after Social Security and Medicare? Yes. In fact, a Republican might have been less or more hawkish with regards to foreign policy than what Donald Trump has been. Donald Trump has been beat and pushed into a particular perspective with regards to foreign policy. In no large part by the Democrats. In large part by Democrats. For political ends, attacking him for something that he wanted to do that was right. Essentially swift-boating him on this idea of Syria. That's the truth of the matter. Pretending as if he's something else. And I don't know if Bill Maher is pretending or otherwise, but he is clearly has drunk in this terror Kool-Aid that Hillary Clinton has put into the electorate as a way of attacking Trump. Let's let him keep going, because he starts to make his case and the case falls apart right off the bat. But let's let him make his case.
But what is so alarming is the assault on democratic norms, what we were talking about here today. Things like threatening to put people in jail, threatening to put journalists in jail.
Hillary Clinton should be in jail. I don't necessarily think it should be a political witch hunt, but there should definitely be a special prosecutor. Comey let that woman off. Now, you think it's perfectly okay for the political process to have somebody to get off again, in the same way that George Bush got off with this idea of going into a country and killing 1 million people. Obama had been putting journalists in jail for the Espionage Act. Obama was going after WikiLeaks or with Julian Assange, who was publishing factually true information. The fact is, Obama hated it because he was publishing stuff showing that what Obama was doing in that office was illegal. The mass spying was illegal. It was completely illegal. Obama put more people in prison for the Espionage Act than any other presidents beforehand in spades. You're literally talking about a president putting people in prison for exposing waste, fraud, and abuse, while at the same token talking about he was going to be the most transparent president since whoever. It was Obama that passed the National Defense Authorization Act, allowing them to lock people up in the black sites, Americans in the black sites, allowing them to pass propaganda as being particularly okay and particularly legal, okay and specifically legal under some of the provisions. It was Obama that expanded the NSA in his national security state, allowing them to create these kind of, what they call it, parallel construction, where you have this mass surveillance and mass spying. It was Obama, before leaving the office, that allowed many of these organizations, like the FBI and everything else, to use information that was retrieved from the NSA. The surveillance and the attack on civil liberties, or the attack on civil liberties, Bill Maher, has taken place under the previous administration. Whatever Donald Trump is using in this are the powers that he got from the last administration. Fact is, joke man Bill Maher had no issue at all when Obama was doing this stuff. But now that Donald Trump is in office, oh my God, this is a shock of the system. Fact is, you should have been against it when Obama was doing it. When Obama was out there killing civilians, killing Americans, what was your response? What was your response? Were you okay with that, joke man? When Obama made the decision that the president himself, without the judicial branch, can make the decision on who they wanted to kill in these kind of extra constitutional killings, were you okay with that? If that was Trump, it would have blew your mind, and yet, because it was Obama, you were okay with it. I'm making a point to you, joke man, that you don't know what you're talking about. You're so terrified that you're letting your blind terror exceed your logic or your reasoning on this. Donald Trump is just a regular Republican. He is the id of the Republican Party, either in spirit or in deed. And yeah, I don't necessarily think that he's all that different from the ones that came before it. I think he is just what the Republican Party is. I'm just saying. I remember some of the other presidents, and yeah, they've become more and more rapacious, fair enough. But let's stop pretending as if Donald Trump is somehow fundamentally different than everyone else that came before him. He is an extension of the previous presidents. He's not some outlier in this way. His rhetoric and his tone is different, but how he behaves in that office is just a typical, regular, what run-of-the-mill, what you would consider today to be a Republican. That should be the thing that terrifies you the most. And pretending as if George Bush or Mitt Romney or these other guys are somehow different, it's foolhardy, it's ridiculous. Let's keep going.
Wanting military parades, praising dictators, wanting to be a dictator. I mean,
we spend nearly $1 trillion on the military. Who gives a shit if you have a parade? I'm sorry. I understand the optics of this and everything else. But spending $1 trillion a year on your military, like $700 billion, $800 billion, we're not even adding the black budget projects. You're talking like $1 trillion, is a military parade. I'm sorry, but all other definition, it is a military parade. The amount of money that you spend on your military. Do you believe that the rest of the world is blissfully unaware that you spend nearly $1 trillion a year on your military? What does the parade matter? What does it matter? You're like, oh my God, they're having a military parade. While at the same token, I'm okay with them spending $1 trillion on the military. Let's keep going. I'm saying the parade doesn't matter. The parade is this thing of optics without necessarily there being any substance behind it. And this praising of dictators, we're okay with regimes that push our narrative. Saudi Arabia is a theocratic dictator. Israel is trying to be a theocratic dictatorship. Dictatorship is wrong, I'm sorry. It is the democracy, but it's a right-wing, I guess you can call it representative government in this case, that at this point has become this kind of apartheid state that we're perfectly okay with, especially when they're doing gross shit in the Middle East, some of which is on our behalf. Let's keep going. I mean, we're okay with the bad guys. Keep in mind, at one point, Donald Trump was one of our bad guys. Even Gaddafi, at one point, played ball with the West. Let's keep going. I'm saying this stuff is massively
We
hypocritical.
are at a moment here. I try to impress on the people who are too young to remember a lot of presidents and a lot of elections, how incredibly different this is than anything that ever came before. I never much liked the other Republicans who were in office, but I have a renewed respect for them. George Bush and Mitt Romney would not have tried to pull this shit. They just wouldn't.
Try to pull what? What are you talking about? George Bush went into a country and killed 1 million people. Put that shit down. You know what? I feel less bad about using this image. George Bush went into a country on the pretext of a lie and killed 1 million people. We're still in those countries today based on the actions and incompetence of George Bush. George Bush should be in jail right now. He should be under a jail right now. And Bill Maher, just like Keith Olbermann, have turned around and says, you know what? I know he killed 1 million people. I know he completely destabilized that region of the world. I know our troops are still in those countries to this day. I know that his poor behavior, in some degree, was the creation of ISIS, led to the creation of ISIS. I know all of this stuff, and yet he wasn't that bad because Donald Trump is trying to have a military parade. You're ridiculous. Your ridiculousness is showing. Your utter ridiculousness is showing. You should be ashamed of yourself. That guy's a fucking war criminal. As bad as you think Donald Trump is just an extension of the previous presidents. You are literally trying to rehabilitate somebody that killed 1 million people. Put that shit in context. We are still in that country today. This has been 17 years. We're still there today. And your response to Donald Trump, because you're so utterly terrified and afraid. Oh, I'm so afraid and alone. I'm Bill Maher. I need a blanket. I need a blanket. You're rehabilitating a mass murderer. That's essentially what you're doing. And just because he's a president and just because he has this cloak of the American office and everything else, it doesn't make him any less than a mass murderer. It is sad and shameful that you're willing to rehabilitate that man over Donald Trump because you're terrified of Donald Trump. Let's keep going. And by the way, you're fundamentally missing what Peterson was getting at in his response to you. Let's keep going.
What about Nixon?
Nixon got caught, and he gave himself up, basically.
Well, although this president makes the Watergate burglars look brilliant.
Right.
Well, but it seems to me that it's not.
Point. We can be as tough as we're being on the president, and I think we should for all the reasons you just said, Bill, without telling his supporters that they're stupid, without saying basket of deplorables. If we want to bring them around to what I would say is a more enlightened kind of thinking, and if we want them to see Donald Trump as someone who's turned the presidency into one long infomercial for Mar-a-Lago, you know, we can do that without saying to them, you've been duped, you're chumps, you're dumb, you're deplorable. And I think we need to talk to them with more generosity than we do.
I'm confused about how this dovetails with your thesis that the left is too preoccupied with being non-confrontational. Right?
The left is too preoccupied
well, just that
with
we
being,
are.
that is
That's
definitely
interesting.
not
Okay,
right.
no, all right.
No, that's a good question.
The idea that liberals, especially intellectuals, are preoccupied with politically correct speech, that they're not.
Oh, I see.
And yet.
No, they're too preoccupied with identity politics by a large margin. And they tend to categorize everyone by their ethnicity and their sex and their gender. And I think all that does is turn people into tribal actors, and that the end result of that is catastrophe.
He's right. Completely right. What he just said right there was perfectly right. They are interested in turning people into identities. They do create these little fiefdoms and tribes in regard to these identities. They do, to some degree, stop people from being able to say some of the things that they need to say or they feel they need to say. I'm not saying that people should be blatantly racist. For example, if you're going out and you call somebody an N-word, or you're calling somebody, you know, some kind of name for some kind of other nationality, I'm not for that. I'm not for that at all. And I will be completely against that, because I still believe that there's some decorum that we need to take when we're interacting with each other. If you're being blatantly offensive, what the fuck do I need to talk to you about? You know? But that being said, within the context of people having conversations, the left gets his panties into a bunch over some of anything. And oftentimes that stifles conversation. Not just stifles conversation. It makes people pissed off. It makes people go against that particular thing. Meaning the thing that you're trying to stifle is the thing that you actually propagate. He's right. He's absolutely right. Let's hear their response. They're not going to like him saying that.
Aren't you also saying, though, that the left is too worried about offending people?
I think that goes along with...
I will.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Well, that goes with...
But then on the other hand, offends people in the political sphere. You're questioning whether that's somehow bad for society writ large.
Well, I'm concerned about... I think that those two issues are... I think that those two issues are somewhat separate. I'm concerned about the dialogue in the United States around the presidency pulling people farther and farther apart. It has nothing to do with the behavior of Trump. I think this is an independent issue. You can say positive or negative things about Trump as his might.
But he's only there because they support him. You see,
I know.
That's the thing.
But that's the issue. That's the issue. Is they did support him, and
without the circus, he's just a lonely clown.
Yeah.
But he has these people in Congress who are enablers, and this base that it is a cult of personality, not unlike dictatorships we've seen in the past. I mean, he said once, famously, I could shoot someone.
I'm sorry. I remember Bill Maher coming on this show one day saying that they need to bring somebody like, they need a rock star. They need, why don't we have rock stars in our office? And it wasn't meaning in the literal sense of a rock star, saying somebody who was popular and lovable and everything else, essentially a cult of personality. I'm sorry, dude, Obama was a cult of personality. By force of personality alone, he was able to wrap you guys in this kind of thing. I know part of it was, oh my God, he's a black president. And again, like what's his name said, you guys worship identity. And for a large part, within the first 4 years, I would make the case that personality alone kept people enraptured. This idea of hope and change and rhetoric and everything else. And then it fell apart. You realize it was bogus. It was nonsense. And yet there's still people who cling to that particular personality. And they use Donald Trump to justify, well, he wasn't that bad because look how bad Trump is. Here's a question for Bill Maher, for Joke Man. Why do you think Trump is in that office? You like to say that it's just his supporters, and his supporters are blindly in allegiance to Donald Trump. But is there something more to it than that? Is it possible because you guys have failed miserably in what the philosophical basis of what you guys were supposed to be? Is that possible to any degree and to any measure? Is it possible that what people considered to be the Democratic Party, or the bread and butter of the Democratic Party, or the base of the Democratic Party, you left your base? And those people realized that you were corporate hacks, and they turned against you. Some of this might have been race, fair enough, but those people always voted Republican. Meaning when Mitt Romney ran that dog whistle campaign, he tried to max out the white vote in the same way that Donald Trump tried to max out the white vote. That seems to be the way Republicans run their race. This is kind of what I mean when I say Donald Trump is not something any more fundamentally different than any other Republican. His tone is different. His manner is different. How he governs in his policy is, for all intents and purposes, the same. What they miss, and the problem with this is, you create a division between Trump and Republicans. You should not create that division. You should tie Trump to the Republican Party because Trump is the Republican Party. The shitty legislation that Donald Trump is putting out of that office is Republican legislation. Do you honestly believe that the reality show host comes into office with policy ideas? He didn't even think he was going to win the goddamn election. Why do you believe that this reality show host would know anything about policy, be it military or domestic? Mr. President, we need you to sign this. This does XYZ. You have a bunch of people who surround themselves with a bunch of neocons who has these neoconish ideas, and that's why they push these ideas. It's not that Donald Trump knows the stuff. He's surrounded by people who give him ideas, and he goes with the ideas. He's running in the Republican circuit, so these ideas tend to trend on the line of Republican. I mean, this is not something fundamentally different, and you really need to stop acting like it is. And worshiping at the altar of George Bush is shameful. It's shameful. And fact is, you've missed Peterson's question and the point that Peterson is getting at. This is not healthy. It doesn't need to be this way. In fact is, engaging into why people made the decision to vote for Trump is your path to trying to get those people back. I don't think people should vote Democrat. But for the matter, I don't think people should vote Republican either. But if you are a Democrat, I strongly suggest you engage into a little bit of soul searching into how on earth you failed so miserably and spectacularly against a Republican Party that is the most batshit crazy in the history of this country. Why do you lose so much to maniacs? until you engage that question, blaming his supporters and everything else is nonsense. I'm perfectly okay with using this picture now because Bill Maher has annoyed me in this video. So, yes, I'm a small person in this regard. I'm going to put the video so you guys can see it for yourself, but joke man Bill Maher fails spectacularly to comprehend what Jordan Peterson is saying. And beyond failing to comprehend what Jordan Peterson is saying, is spouting nonsense. Spouting nonsense. I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support through, usually when I'm live, Super Chat, but also the Patreon. Thanks everyone.